Hey everyone, I'm Rebecca Pickens. I'm a certified book coach and developmental editor, and I'm also host of Self-Editing Essentials, a group coaching program for writers who have finished or almost finished writing their manuscripts and are ready to learn the art of self-editing. Every week, I like to answer a question from members of my writing group, one-on-one clients, and from members of my writing community in general. This week's question comes from Kathy, a member of my Self-Editing Essentials group, and she's asking about multiple point of view. How many is too many? Kathy is writing her novel in third person close. Third person close is really similar to first person point of view, right? In person point of view, the story is being told through one character who is up close and right there in the story. So it has sentences like, I saw, I knew, I went. Everything is from that first person I pronoun. Third person close works the same way. We're seeing a story or a chapter or even just a scene through one person's eyes. The only difference with third person close is that we're using the he, she, they pronouns rather than that I, that first person pronoun. But it works similarly where we're really getting up close. We know this character and we know we want to know exactly how they're experiencing events as they unfold. So the question is complicated by the fact that every story works differently. So I'm going to talk about kind of the general rules, the rule of thumb when it comes to point of view, but then we're going to talk about some exceptions and how we can get creative and work around some of those rules that have been established. So typically, 1 to 3 points of view in a story is common, it's manageable, we see it all the time. Your reader is not going to have a lot of difficulty navigating a 1 to 3 person point of view story. When we start to get into 4 or 5 points of view, it can work well in complex stories, but it's really going to require a strong narrative control. We're getting more into craft here. We're getting more into a very specific kind of niche storytelling. Your readers are going to begin to recognize that, oh, this is a story that has a lot happening and contains multiple points of view. And then finally, 6 points of view and beyond that, we're getting into some risky territory. That's not to say that it can't be done. It's not to be said that it's not done. You can go on any bookshelf and you will find stories that play with point of view in this way. But that's where we want to start to drill down and ask ourselves, does every single one of these points of view belong in this story? Is it essential? And if the answer is yes, or even if you're just able to eliminate a few, but you still have this large ensemble of points of view, you want to make sure they are distinct, absolutely necessary, and earned. So there's some really simple questions that we can ask ourselves when we're determining, does my story need this point of view? The first one is this point of view essential to the emotional or narrative arc of your story? Does this character somehow help us see the story through to its logical end? Does it show something that no other character possibly could? Is this such a unique point of view? Is it so tied into your story's narrative arc that it's absolutely essential? Does this character's point of view deepen the theme or expand the character's world in a meaningful way that, again, feels absolutely essential to your story? And then you can ask yourself, would the story lose clarity or emotional power without this point of view? If the answer is no to most of these questions, that point of view might be more of a distraction than a strength. So the risk of too many point of views is foremost reader confusion. When we have multiple points of view, that's more people to track. That's more details to track. And your reader can become weary of this, start to not pay as much attention, and then lose track of who is even talking and why should they care. Every time you add a new point of view, you run the risk of losing narrative momentum, right? If you think about it, when we are invested in a particular character and things are moving forward, we are right there with them and we are going forward to the finish line. When we stop to insert someone new, to put in a new point of view, we're essentially putting one part of your story on pause. And that's okay. That can heighten tension. That can give us a new place, a new vantage point to read your story from. But too often, if we do this repeatedly, we do start to see narrative momentum suffer. The third problem with too many POVs is shallow character development. The more POVs, the harder it is to fully develop each one of them. So it's sort of like going to a party and having lots and lots of people there. And it's great, it's interesting, it's vibrant, but you never really get to have that deep, meaningful conversation. You don't get to make a new friend at the party like you would if it were a smaller group and you could really talk intimately to one another. This point of view in your story is going to work the same way. Too many of them spreads your reader too thin, and they're not going to connect with the key characters with the same intensity. And finally, we can suffer by diluting emotional stakes. Readers may not form deep connections with anyone. And so when we see these characters facing an obstacle, we might not care as much, right? We may be mildly interested, it may be an interesting plot point, but if we're not all in with that character, we're not going to feel the same tension, the same worry, the same excitement that we would if we were really rooting for a character that we had gotten to know well. So these are the risks of having too many points of view. But here's the cool thing about writing. There are always exceptions and there are workarounds. So we can make multiple points of view work if certain things are ensured. If you're writing epic fiction with many, many storylines, your reader has signed up for that. They know what they're getting into. That's a whole genre that attracts readers who want that complicated world building and a huge cast of characters that they follow. They're up for it. So, as long as the structure of your story can support those multiple points of view, and you have clear voice, strong pacing, and a way to ground your reader quickly so they know what's going on, so they're not spending time trying to figure out who's who, then you can make multiple points of view work. So, simply said, if you're wondering whether your story has too many points of view, the answer is usually going to lie in whether each one carries weight emotionally, thematically, and structurally. So, my tip would be start with as few points of view as you possibly can and add only what is absolutely necessary, whatever the story demands. And when you see a need, you can add another character. Now I have a list of some key questions that you can ask yourself before you decide to give another character point of view in your story. Does the character know something that no one else knows? Does their perspective offer essential information or emotional insight that cannot be conveyed through another point of view? If so, they may deserve a point of view. Is this character central to the emotional heart of the story? Will readers care more deeply about the story if they experience it through this person's interior life? That's an excellent reason for giving a character point of view. Does that character's arc justify the narrative space? So, this is not always the case, but typically, if your character has their own point of view, tells the story from their point of view, typically we say that that character needs to be worthy of a character arc. If they're not, that could be a red flag that they don't need a point of view. Now, there are exceptions to that rule for sure, but that is a guideline you can consider. We want to ask, do they have a clear internal journey or change? Point of view characters typically grow, shift, and struggle in a way that readers should witness from the inside. In other words, we get inside their heads to understand how they are reacting, how they are confronting whatever these obstacles are that you've thrown in front of them. Does the point of view serve a function that another point of view cannot? Does it offer a radically different lens that no other character in that story does? Does it show the world a worldview that no other character in your story does? Does it balance tone, theme, or pacing? And does it expand the moral or emotional complexity of your story? These are reasons to give a character point of view. We can also ask, will the reader miss anything vital if we don't hear from this character directly? Could another character observe or infer what that character thinks or feels? Could we see it through conversation of some kind? Could another character make a note of what that character is experiencing, right? Could they do the work for them? If so, you might not need their point of view. Is this character's voice distinct and necessary? Can their point of view offer a unique voice, tone, or style that enriches the reading experience rather than overlapping with others? So if they're voicing opinions or speaking in a way that another character does as well, maybe that other character can achieve that goal. Maybe these two characters can be turned into one. These are places to look to streamline your presentation. Does this point of view earn its weight in the structure? Every point of view, like we said, is diluting time with other characters. So, does this one carry enough thematic or narrative weight to justify that trade-off? What happens to pacing or clarity when this point of view is added? Would the story feel sharper, more propulsive, or more fragmented with a new perspective? And finally, and this is kind of fun to think about, if you remove that point of view entirely, what would the story lose? If the answer is not much, or I could tell it through another character, then it's probably not needed, and I would advise removing that point of view. So if you would like to learn more about multiple points of view, you really want to see them in action in other books, I highly recommend using mentor texts. Now, if you're not familiar with using books as mentor texts, I have a video all about the ways to use other people's writing to learn key elements to incorporate into your work. You can check that out on my YouTube channel. I'll stick a link in the comments section for that video. After you've watched that video, if you decide you're looking for some mentor text to work through multiple point of view, here are some good ones. The Ministry for the Future is pretty traditional in some ways, in the sense that the chapters mostly alternate between two protagonists. And as we've discussed, that's standard. There's no problem with that. There's nothing unusual about that. But what's very interesting about this book is that some of the chapters are presented from the point of view of other characters or nameless narrators. The narration style shifts at times and even includes object narratives. Object narratives are narratives told from the perspective of objects rather than from people. So lots of interesting technique at play here that may be very interesting to you if you are trying to play with multiple points of view. The Left Hand of the Darkness is by Ursula Le Guin, and it's another wonderful example of a solid mentor text. This story is primarily told from two points of view, but it also includes documents such as field reports, religious text, and folk tales to help tell the story. So in Le Guin's case, maybe she didn't want to have many points of view in the story. Perhaps she felt like that muddied the waters too much. So she got clever with this, and she worked around it by including other kinds of sources for information that could provide unique information that perhaps the characters in her story were not privy to, but readers needed to know. So great one to look at if you're looking for some creative workarounds as alternatives to incorporating multiple points of view. And finally, we have a wildly popular popular YA novel, Six of Crows, which is part of a series. And this contains 6 point of view main characters. And this novel really shows how if you can ensure that your characters have unique goals, unique voices, and unique obstacles, that they become vivid, dynamic people on the page, and your book will indeed be able to contain all of those points of view, and your readers will be able to follow them and engage with them and really enjoy your story. So check these out if you are inclined to do so. And let me know in the comments section if there are mentor texts that you work with or examples of multiple point of view that have inspired some of your own work. I would love to hear about them. All right, thanks so much. I will be back next Tuesday with another video. If you found this video helpful, I would be so grateful if you would hit like. And if you would like to subscribe to our channel, we will have new videos every week about publishing, writing, editing, and I will try to answer any questions that I receive. So keep in touch, keep writing, and I'll see you next week.